Hey guys, it's Trafotin. I recently made a video about making an unattended Windows installer, and I got flooded with tons of comments of people asking to switch to Linux, or people pleading others to switch to Linux. While the discussion of installation comes up, I really don't think that installation is the biggest blocker for most people. Today, I want to take a critical examination on the mindset of the people online who beg people to use Linux. And I'm also trying to intentionally avoid common arguments like not having the applications you need or hardware issues. So this is purely a people issue. Now, when I say that installing Linux is fine, I want to take a time to analyze the installation process, not in a vacuum, but as a whole. For most people, it's going to be you buy a USB stick, download the Raspberry Pi imager, and then flash your distro of choice with the ISO file onto your USB stick using the Raspberry Pi imager. Now, I'll tell you right now, when I've done this for most people, oftentimes I am the one supplying people with the USB stick because most people do not have one. But on top of that, picking a distro you use is a whole nother can of worms, and whether that distro is even right or not is something for people who follow my channel already know about and that I've complained about ad nauseum, and I'm just going to tell you to watch a different video. For our purposes, it doesn't really matter what you pick, and I'm not going to beat that drum to death. But while mashing a random key on your computer to boot up is pretty annoying, and downloading your ISO file is really annoying, there's not really a whole lot developers themselves can do about that. It's not the best for the people who really don't know, but it's honestly the best that it can be right now. But that also leaves the actual installation process of Linux. And you're bound to find plenty of written guides online about how to install something like Ubuntu. I'm not going to cover them here. This is something that Linux app developers can do something about, and I think that it's actually in a good spot right now. It's very clear what you need to do, and oftentimes you are literally able to mash buttons and you complete your installation with very little issues. But I want to dive into the real problem here. Most people will not use Linux, not because it's hard to install. They're not going to use Linux because of the long-term experience and the problems that are going to crop up over time. Once you've installed Linux and logged on for the first time, it's all about setting up, and this is almost always where all of the problems crop up. First off, if you are an NVIDIA user, statistics claim about 60% of all computer users, you might not even be able to log in if you first download Linux. But hardware notwithstanding, it's installing applications that's a big problem. You could resort to packages from your software store, but in most distros, more often than not, they can break or block updates if they even work at all. And you also have to hope that the distro you chose hasn't modified the program in a significant way or updates it in a timely fashion. What's more is that yearly updates, and of all the people I've installed Linux on, which is to say none of them except one have succeeded in upgrading to major versions of Linux without my intervention. And it doesn't matter what distro you use, I don't want to hear it. I've seen this happen with Ubuntu, Fedora, heck, even OpenSUSE, and it is unacceptable. And even though Windows conceals it, the fact that people are still able to move seamlessly between different versions of Windows, like Windows 11 24H1 or Windows 11 24H2 with relatively little issue, even if Microsoft has to fumble with updates for a few months. And a lot of people who consider themselves part of online Linux circles claim that this is because of fragmentation. And while I'm sure that this is true, I think there's a reason that I think will resonate with more people better, and it's that perfect is the enemy of good. Most people want their packaging standard or the way they do things to be perfect, and we all settle on the same formats and solutions. How do you download something like Audacity, which is actually what I'm using to record my audio right now? Well, you go to their website and you download the app image they provide. The problem is that app images are inherently broken and horribly insecure because they require libraries that are horribly out of date and that nobody uses anymore. The only reason most distros package them is purely because app images require them. How can I trust a package given to me when the method of distribution is creating more problems than it intended to solve? Why can't everyone else agree to use what I'm using? Well, I think the problem is also rooted in the chase over the unicorn of the desktop Linux user, especially the new one. The experience of desktop Linux is not very good, and when people have to resort to using something like Google to read a solution or documentation, that doesn't sound like a good experience to me. Desktop Linux will not succeed with a mainstream audience when many parts of Desktop Linux are one developer away from going extinct. Now, this analogy is probably going to get me in trouble in the future, but I'm going to try to use it anyway. Using Linux is like being part of a food pantry. Anyone who goes to a food pantry needs to eat, and there's lots of people who are hungry. We want to solve starvation in the world, so people need to get fed. Now, there are people who go to get the food that they need, but where are they going to get the food from? They have to get the food from people, and it's people who need to bring food to the food pantry so everyone can eat. People who clean the food pantry so that the space is nice to eat in, and so that the food doesn't go bad, or for people to serve the food and to service the people. Now, today, if we're looking at the analysis of Linux as a food pantry, Linux is only at the stage where there's a lot of people who are hungry, but not enough people to perform the basic task of running the food pantry itself. Most Linux distributions can't even vet their own packages, or collapse because someone has left. But food does still need to be put on the table, and though people might complain, the minority of developers remaining still try their hardest to feed the crowd. But what I consider a bigger problem is people who serve food at the Linux food pantry are way too content. They want things to stay the way it is because that's the same way they learned them. And then people won't have the same magical experience they did when they first started. These are the same kinds of people who like to scour issue pages of projects for juicy gossip or reading the Linux kernel mailing list. And maybe they might customize their desktop environment or tweak the presentation of the Linux food just a little more. But at the end of the day, it's still the same old food of the desktop Linux food pantry has been putting out for years, and nothing is really changing. These are the same kinds of people who cosplay as developers when all they did was just change this one little line in a text file. It's also the developers who make applications just for themselves. Developers are in the kitchen, but they also need to meet the demand of food that's being asked of them. But they also need to have empathy for the people, and the people need to have empathy for them. And it almost never seems to work because everyone's just a faceless person online. I want to end with maybe just a slightly unpopular opinion, maybe just a little bit. Linux doesn't need more users. Using Linux is not about customization or choice, just like visiting a food pantry isn't about the flavors of food that you're getting. It's about the food, or in the case of Linux, a tool, doing its job and raising a community in the process to solve a problem. Then, and only then, can Linux actually call itself a platform, because right now, that platform doesn't exist. And I want to be clear, the online Linux user is not developers. It's the people online showing off screenshots of their i3 or Hyperlane configuration. Here's a great drinking game. If you want to guess what the comments of a YouTube video or a Reddit post are, just guess what the comments are, and then take a shot if you see the comment. If you take enough shots, eventually you're going to understand what the comments are really quick. If you wanted proof of how much groupthink there is in the online Linux community and the kind of cult-like behavior that you see of people all parroting the same ideas or outdated information, this needs to stop. The real Linux community is not these people. It's the people who actually run the food pantry and are out there solving the problem. If people are going to spend their time online complaining about Linux drama, or did you hear about X influencer who used Linux, I think we have a problem. The only way Linux is going to change is when money and development power is given to major desktop Linux projects. It's time to stop wasting time on customization, packaging applications, or looking at installing Linux, because I've had enough. And it's time for people to do better things with their lives, to make it better for other people. And no, making a bash script is not it. I'm sure I've angered a lot of people, but if you liked this video, why don't you go leave a like on this video? Leave a like on this video if you'd like to hear me complain more about how Linux users are ruining society by meeting in the basement of their church. And if you'd like to see more about what I do, you can also visit my website, Trafotin.com. If you don't want to watch the video, you can always feel free to read a transcript on my website instead. That way, you can just read the experience and be done in like 4 minutes instead of like 10. And if you'd like to support the work that I do, you can always give me money through Patreon, YouTube memberships, and cryptocurrency. So, thank you for watching. I'll see all of you guys next time, and I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your week.